Hi, I'm James.
And I'm Anthony.
And this is Words and Numbers.
This week, by listener request, is a special lecture I gave to high school students on personal finance. As James is recovering from surgery, which we'll discuss on next week's episode, we offer you this in substitution of our regular weekly episode.
The way to think about personal finance is it's the closest we come to having a time machine. Think about your life from the past to the future. You exist as a young person now, and maybe you earn some amount of money, and later on you'll become an older person earning more money and older still at the height of your career. And then finally you'll be retired where your income will be close to zero. The way we normally think about borrowing and lending is that it's something that we do with a bank. You save your money, you put it into the bank, or need to borrow, you go to the bank and to borrow the money. We think that we're engaging in a transaction with the bank. In reality, you're engaging in a transaction with yourself. When you borrow money, what you're doing is borrowing quite literally from your future self. Your future self is the person who pays back this money that you borrow. What's happening here with personal finance is that you're tapping into the income that the future version of yourself earns. The future version of yourself gives that money to the current version of yourself, and you use that money, amongst other things, to do what we call building human capital. And human capital is the term we use for how valuable your labor is, what sorts of skills and so forth that you have. Your middle-aged version of yourself gives money to the young version of yourself to build the human capital so that the middle-aged version of yourself can be earning lots of money, and so that then you'll be able to save enough to finance the old version of yourself when you don't have much income at all. This is the crux of personal finance. Now, there are four things that go on here that are important: earning, spending, borrowing, and saving. And I'll talk about each one of these separately. Let's start with earning. People will pay you to do two things. The first is things other people don't want to do. And we refer here to your preference and your tolerance. You may like to do certain things that other people don't like to do. For example, maybe you like to climb high places or this sort of thing where other people don't like to do this. This enables you to take on jobs that involve climbing high places that other people don't want. And therefore, when we need someone to climb, like, these aerials to repair the lights or the wires or whatever it is, we're willing to pay a lot of money for someone to do that, because not many people like to do it. So that's preference. Another is tolerance. What are you willing to tolerate, right? There are some nasty jobs out there that some people are willing to tolerate more than others. And those that are willing to tolerate the nasty jobs will pay them to do these jobs, because not many people want to do them. So one thing people will pay you for is to do things other people don't want to do. The other thing people will pay you for is to do things that other people can't do. And here we talk about training and talent. You have skills, you have education that enable you to do certain things that other people can't do. And because of that, people will be willing to pay you to do these things. So let's talk about things that other people don't want to do. I'll give you some examples. A sewage inspector. The median income for a sewage inspector in the United States is $50,000. Garbage collector is $60,000. Portable toilet cleaner, $60,000. A coal miner, $65,000. A crime scene cleaner. This is someone that comes in after a violent crime and cleans up, all the business there. This person earns on average about $75,000 nationwide. And a landfill gas operator earns about $100,000. And that's an interesting job, because there are two things going on here. One, it's a job that not many people want to do, because why? You're dealing with a landfill. It's nasty. It smells bad. It's grimy, all of this. But also, what the landfill gas operator does is siphon off methane that's produced in the landfill and store it. This is a very dangerous job because, of course, methane is explosive. So here's a job that is both nasty and dangerous. Two reasons why few people want to do it. And because of that, landfill gas operators are paid around $100,000. Now, to put these numbers in perspective, the median, the person in the middle, if you line up all Americans from poorest to richest, the guy in the middle earns $50,000. So all of these jobs, none of which require a college degree, all of these jobs pay above the median. Why? Because they involve things that other people generally don't want to do. So let's talk about things that other people can't do. You have some raw talent. Maybe you're good at public speaking, or you're a musician, or you're an athlete, or you're particularly good at mathematics, or whatever it is. You have some raw talent. You'll get some form of education. Maybe it's a high school education. Maybe you go on to college, you get a college education. Maybe you go to technical school, you get trained to do something like be a plumber or a carpenter or something like that. On top of all that stuff, you'll get on-the-job training. There are a number of jobs that pay quite well, that require pretty much no education at all. The employer will teach you what you need to know when you take the job. So we call this on-the-job training. And then finally, you have some relevant experience just from living life, things that you do. Maybe you take care of an aged parent or siblings, or maybe you have some particular interest, some sport that has some relevance to a future job. All of this stuff is relevant experience. All these things together, from your talent to your education to your training to your experience, all this stuff we call human capital. Think of human capital for a human being the same way you think about what economists call capital for a business. When economists use the word capital, what we mean is buildings, land, machinery, things that businesses use to transform inputs into product. It's things that businesses use to transform inputs into product, capital. And so too here, we have human capital. Now, this is intangible, right? You can't touch it, but it's capital for the human being, just like the buildings, land, and machinery are capital for the business. And you can develop this capital, and in developing it, you become more valuable to others. So here you are on this timeline, from you at the present, you in the middle age, you at the old. And what's going on here with personal finance is that those versions of you in middle age loan money to the young version of yourself, so the young version of yourself can develop human capital. And in developing human capital, you make all the future versions of yourself better off. They become more, your incomes go up, your savings go up, this sort of thing. So let's talk a little bit about how much pay you can get with your human capital. I'm going to show you here numbers that are average for the United States. So some places higher, some places lower. I know you all are Long Island, so the numbers there are going to tend to be higher than what I'm showing you here, but this is average for the United States. The average person with a high school diploma only will have a career of about 50 years. And over the course of that 50 years, this person will earn a total of $2.5 million over the course of all these years. Someone with an associate's degree has a shorter career length because this person's got to take 2 years out to go to college to get this or technical school to get these 2-year degree. So this person only works for 48 years, but ends up accumulating a total of $3 million in earnings. Someone with a bachelor's degree has a shorter career because this person's got to spend 4 years in college, but over the course of this person's career ends up earning over $4 million in total. Someone with a master's will earn over 5, and someone with a doctorate will generally earn over 6. And remember, these are averages. Some are much better, some are much worse, but on average, this is what you're looking at. So as right now, as young people you're in a position now to decide where your life is going to go. Think about these various paths. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever you have here, 5 different paths you can go down. Each one has pros and cons to it, right? You go for the higher level degrees. The pro is you earn much more money. The con is that it's really difficult to do those things, right? And some of them are boring. You go with a high school diploma, you're done at the end of high school, you go out, you get a job, you start earning money immediately. That's the pro. The con is over the course of your career, you can expect to only earn about $2.5 million. So you think about these trade-offs. As you think about the trade-offs, remember this. There's no right answer. There's an answer that's right for you. There might be a different answer that's right for somebody else. What's important is that as you think about these things, you think about them with open eyes, that you understand the pros and the cons that are attached to each one of these possible options you might consider. So let's talk a little bit about college, because probably most of you are thinking about that now or will be in the next year or two. And people will tell you, well, a college degree is important. And here I am, I'm a college professor, and I'm telling you, a college degree doesn't matter. A college major, on the other hand, can matter quite a bit. And let me show you the distinction. What you're seeing here is a whole bunch of vertical bars. Each bar represents a different college major. There are 400 of them here. The height of the bar shows you how much money a person with that college major can expect to earn over the course of his or her career. Now, this excludes people who get masters, people who get doctorates, JDs, MDs, these kinds of things. This is strictly 4-year degree, that's it. On the left, you see the bars starting at about 4 million, and as you go to the far left, it's almost at 7 million. All those majors in there are what we call the STEM disciplines. STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, mathematics. All the mathematically oriented degrees are there. And over the course of a person's career, that person can expect to earn, even with just a 4-year degree, at least $4 million. The one on the far left is petroleum engineering. Someone with a 4-year degree in petroleum engineering can expect to earn almost $7 million over the course of his or her career. And why is that so? Because petroleum engineering combines both of those two things we were talking about earlier, of people who earn money do so because they do things other people don't want to do, and they do things other people can't do. Petroleum engineering hits both of those things. It's an engineering degree, right? So it requires lots of mathematical training, engineering training, and not many people can do that. Plus, if you're a petroleum engineer, you're spending a lot of your time working, down on the ground or on oil derricks where you're separated from your family for months on end. It's difficult work, it's draining work, this sort of thing. It's also dangerous. So it hits both of those things. It's a job that involves things that other people can't do and involves a lot of things that other people don't want to do. And so that's why it pays so much money. Now, if we go further to the right on this graph, you start to run into the business majors. Further right still, you start to get into physical things like nursing, biology, these sorts of things. You get into the liberal arts further still. And on the far right, you'll find the fine arts. Now, as you look at all of these majors, let me superimpose on top of here the cost of a college degree. And what I'm going to show you is the average cost, right? So some colleges are more, some are less, the average across the United States for a 4-year degree. And I'm going to include not just the cost of the tuition and fees, but also the money you don't earn because you go to college instead of going to the job market. As a high school graduate, you can expect to enter the job market immediately, as soon as you graduate your senior year of high school, around, probably on Long Island, I'm guessing 35 to 40,000, somewhere in there. Nationwide, it's more like 25,000. But you can expect to earn a decent amount of money coming straight out of high school. Every year you spend in college is a year you aren't earning that money that you could have earned. And so that adds on to the cost of your college education. So this red line, that's the cost of a 4-year degree. What you pay the university plus the money you could have earned but didn't because you're now spending 4 years of your time in college. And look at something fascinating and scary. You see that clump of majors over on the right-hand side? The height of those blue bars don't reach up to the red line. In other words, what you can expect to get from those degrees is actually less than what you can expect to pay for college. These degrees are net negatives. You're actually worse off going to college for those majors than you are just going straight into the job market after high school. So the moral of the story is, you think about this, it's not the college degree that matters. It's what you major in when you get to college. Now, you might stop and say to yourself, well, wait a minute. What if I love something over here on the right? You are involved in theater and dance, and that's the thing that you love, and that's a business you want to go into. Theater and dance is over there on the right-hand side, right? The value of that degree is actually less than what it costs you to get the degree. So what do? All is not lost for you. What you do is, when you go to college, you double major in the theater and dance on the one side, and on the other side, you pick something that's further on the left on the graph. For example, general business. General business probably falls into the second or the third of those braces you see there, having a net value of about $3 million. So what do you do here? What you do is you have something to fall back on that has value if this thing that you love doesn't pan out. Now, that's earning. Let's talk about spending, because this is something people, when you talk about personal finance, they don't think about enough. We focus our entire energies on how can I earn more money, when actually controlling how much you spend can be as valuable or even more valuable than how much you earn. Let's think about what influences your spendings. One thing is circumstances, right? You may be born into a situation where you're an only child, you have elderly parents, and they require medical care or hospice or something, and you have to spend money to help them. That's simply a circumstance. There's nothing you could do about that, right? However, what you can do something about are specific choices you make. Let's talk about those. There's a whole bunch of choices you'll make throughout your life, but let's talk about some major ones. Where you live, how big of a family you decide to have, and your personal habits. Start with where you live. Here is all the states in the United States. And the bars that you see here are the median monthly rent. So think not just of rent like in renting an apartment, but also think about monthly mortgage payments if you own a house, right? We call this all rent together. This is a monthly rent. And of course, some places are higher, some places are lower. What you're seeing here are the average or the median. Over there, West Virginia is the lowest. The monthly rent in West Virginia is less than $1,000 a month. The highest is California, about $2,500 a month. Now, I'm only showing you rent here, but although you'll have lots of costs, you have a car payments, these sorts of things, and food, and if you want to go out, this and to the movies, you have all kinds of expenses. But what you'll find is that as you look across different states of the country, these expenses you have, what prices are like, will tend to match what rent is. So not in every case, but in general, in places where rent is high, other things will be high as well. The cost of going out for dinner, the cost of a movie ticket, the cost of a new coat, pair of shoes, that's going to tend to be high. In places where rent is low, all those other things will tend to be low as well. So what I'm doing here is taking rent as a proxy, as a signal for cost of living in general across these states. And you can see it varies dramatically. Now, the thought might occur to you, this, by the way, that's you, New York. The thought might occur to you, but wait, rent is going to be higher and prices of other things will be higher as well in higher income areas. So I said before, here you are on Long Island, and coming straight out of high school, I would expect that you could probably get a job paying about $40,000 immediately, versus everywhere else in the country, you're talking like $25,000, $26,000. However, on Long Island, things are going to be more expensive than they will be otherwise. So if you think about those two things, it should occur to you that what matters is not where is the cost of rent, the cost of prices in general, lowest, but rather where is it lowest relative to my income? So in an ideal world, you'd want to live in a place in which the cost of living is low, but your income is high. So let's look at this. I'm going to show you again all the states of the United States. This time they're arranged not by the cost of rent, but by the cost of rent as a fraction of the average person's income. And that's what it looks like. So to read this picture, if you're over there in West Virginia, which is number one, the average rent in West Virginia runs about 25% of the average person's income. So if you think of yourself as an average person, you can expect, if you live in West Virginia, that 25% of your paycheck is going to go toward rent. Go to the other extreme, you're in Hawaii. At Hawaii, the number's 55%. The average person in Hawaii can expect to spend about 55% of his or her income on rent. If they're spending 55% of their income on rent, you know that everything else, the clothes, the shoes, gasoline, the cars, everything else is going to be more expensive as well. And there you are, New York. Now, as you think about this, one other point should occur to you. And that is, you don't get to keep all of your income. You're going to have to pay taxes, and your taxes are going to vary according to what state you live in. Some states have higher tax rates, other states have lower tax rates. So then what really matters, if you want to talk about spending and where you should live, that's the cheapest place to live, what matters is what is your cost of living relative not to your income, but relative to your after-tax income. That is, what is my cost of living relative to the amount of money I get to keep after the government is done taxing me? And if you look at those numbers, they look like this. And unfortunately, New York is not the worst, but it's second, third down from the worst. This is the median monthly rent as a fraction of average after-tax income. Number one is Missouri. With Missouri, you're paying roughly 22% of your after-tax income in rent. The biggest one is California. In California, the median person is spending 75% of his after-tax income on rent. So as you look at this, the take-home message is be careful of doing the following. Be careful when you go onto the job market of comparing what different businesses are willing to pay you. Because most people would do something like this. They would receive, let's suppose you receive 2 job offers, and one job offer is in New York City earning $100,000. And the other job offer is in, Denver, Colorado, paying $50,000. Most people would look at those 2 things and say, well, that's a no-brainer. I can make twice as much taking the New York City job as I can taking the Denver job. And yet what you have ignored are these other 2 things that matter so much. What's the cost of living and what's the taxes? And it could well turn out that you're actually financially better off taking the Denver job, even though the Denver job pays less, because your cost of living, your taxes may be even less still. To give you an example of this, let's compare New York, the state you're in, to Missouri, which is the lowest cost state on this list. When you take into account cost of living and state and local taxes, an $80,000 job in New York gives you as much purchasing power, as much of a standard of living as a $26,000 job in Missouri does. The differences here are astounding. So as you think about personal finance, yes, it's important how much you earn. It's also important how much you spend. And how much you spend can be significantly influenced by where you choose to live. Second, family size. This matters a lot. You think about, maybe getting married, having kids, whatever, like this sort of thing. The cost of raising a child in the US on average is $17,000 a year. Some more, some less, but on average, this is it in the US. So if you think to yourself, I'd like to get married and have 1 kid, okay? That 1 kid is going to cost you from birth to age 17 about $280,000. This does not include college. It's just to age 17. If you've got a high school diploma and that's it, you don't have any college beyond that, then that one kid is going to eat 11% of your income. If you've got a bachelor's degree, the one kid will eat 7% of your income, the cost of one child. Cost of two children, $440,000. Cost of three children is $600,000. You start to get large families, 5 kids is going to cost you almost $1 million. Now, of course, it's not $1 million all up front. You pay this in bits and pieces each year as the kid grows up. But if you're a person with a high school diploma, those 5 children are going to consume almost 40% of the income you will earn ever over the course of your entire life. They'll take 40% of it. So again, there's no right answer here. I'm not saying you should have lots of kids. I'm not saying you should have few kids. What I'm saying is that you should go into these decisions with open eyes and understand the pros and the cons of making these various choices. The pro to having lots of kids is kids are a lot of fun, right? They're wonderful little things. The con is they're really stinking expensive. So you think about the pros and cons as you think about this personal finance decision. What are you going to do? We talk about where you live. We talk about family size. Personal habits matter a lot. People don't pay nearly enough attention to them. Let's suppose that you buy lunch every day at work rather than taking your lunch with you, right? And people think about this and they usually say something like this. Well, look, I earn enough money. Lunch is only, $15 if I'm going to go out, eat something like that. And I'm worth it and I work hard and it gives me a chance to relax. And this is a good thing. So I should just go out for lunch rather than taking lunch with me. Okay. So if you go out to lunch, that's going to cost you $15. If you make a lunch at home and carry it with you, let's say it costs you $2, which is probably a reasonable estimate. Now, over the course of a 45-year career, you're going to work 255 days a year. That means you will go out for lunch 11,475 times at a net cost of $13. That is, what I mean is if you choose to go out for lunch, it's going to cost you $13 more than if you carried lunch in. So 11,475 lunches at a net cost of $13 each. That's $150,000 over the course of 45 years. Now, you might say to yourself as you look at that, all right, $150,000, that's a lot of money, but it's over the course of 45 years, right? Divide this by 45. It's not that big of a deal. And you go back to the thought of, look, I work hard. I'm worth it. I should go out. It's just, $15 for a sandwich. It's not that big of a deal. Yeah, except suppose instead of going out for lunch, you took that $13 and you put it into a retirement fund paying 7% interest. And you say to yourself, that's $13. $13 is nothing. It doesn't matter. You're right. $13 doesn't matter. But it's $13 a day, every day you work over the course of 45 years, and you would be earning 7% interest on that. Do the math, and that's a total of $950,000. Quite literally, going out for lunch every day instead of carrying lunch in with you will cost you about $1 million. By the time you retire, you will be $1 million poorer than you would have been had you carried your lunch and put the $13 into retirement instead. Now, this is just going out for lunch. Take this same thought process and apply it to all sorts of things. You have a Netflix subscription along with Amazon, when you could probably get by with only one or the other, or you could get by with neither and have Hulu with the advertising, right? This kind of thing. There's all sorts of decisions you make on your day-to-day life that involve little amounts of money that normally you wouldn't think anything of. But when you take these little amounts of money and you add them up day after day after day, and you apply interest to them, By the time you reach age 67, all of a sudden, this is a huge amount of money you're dealing with. So we talk about earning, we talk about spending. Let's talk about borrowing. So I describe personal finance to you as the future version of yourself giving money to the young version so the young version can build up human capital. Let's look at an example of this. Should you borrow or should you save up to go to college? Now, let me give you some numbers to go with this. Let's suppose that when you graduate high school with just a high school diploma, you can earn $30,000. And when you graduate college with a 4-year degree, you can earn $50,000, right? The numbers will vary, but let's just take this as an example. And let's suppose that you get annual pay raises of 3%, which is kind of normal, right? Give or take. And let's suppose that you're a disciplined saver. One of you in the questions you sent me asked, what's a reasonable amount to save that you should save on an ongoing basis? And the answer varies by age, but 15% is a really good target. So let's say you save 15% of your pay. Oh, in college, that's going to cost you $40,000. Some places more, some places less. On average, $40,000 for 4 years of college is about right. So here's the question. Do you take out a loan and then you have to pay the loan back? Or do you just go into the job market after high school? You work, you save 15% of your paycheck until you've saved $40,000. And then you go to college, you pay cash, and you graduate college completely debt-free. Which of those two things should we do? So let's talk about saving for college first. So here you are at age 18. And straight out of high school, you earn $30,000. You save 15% of that. That's $5,000. Okay. Age 19. Age 19, you get a 3% raise. That brings you up to $31,000. And you save 15% of that. So you save 15% of that along with the $5,000 you had the year before. In total, your savings is now $9,000. Age 20. You get another raise. You're now at $32,000. You save 15% of that. Along with what you saved at age 18 and age 19, your savings account is now $14,000. So you're a quarter of the way to saving up what you need for college. And you keep on doing this. It's going to take you 8 years to save up enough to pay for college. So by the time you hit age 25, your income has risen. You're now at $37,000 and your savings is the $40,000. You can now hand this over to the college and you get a college education. Okay, so here you are, age 26. You got no income now because you're spending all your time in college. You're a full-time student and your savings just dropped by $10,000. That was the first $10,000 check you wrote to the university. At age 27, you're still in college. You're not earning anything, but you had to pay another $10,000 to the university. So now your savings is down to $20,000. And you keep on doing this for 4 years. At the end of 4 years, you're 29 years old. You have completed your college degree. You've used up all of your savings doing it, but you are debt-free. You have no debt. And you now walk into the job market with your 4-year degree and you earn $50,000. And you save 15% of it. That's $8,000 that you save. At age 31, you get a 3% raise. Now you're earning $52,000. You save 15% of that. Your savings is now up to $15,000. And you can keep on doing this. By the time you hit age 35, look at what's happened. You're now earning $58,000 a year, and you have almost $50,000 in savings. No debt, right? Because you completely paid cash for your college education. This looks really good. But now let's do it the other way. What happens if you borrow to go to college? So here you are, age 18. You got no income because you're a full-time student and you're $10,000 in the hole. You've taken a $10,000 loan to pay for that first year of college. Age 19, still no income. You're a full-time student and you're $20,000 in the hole. By the time you're age 21, you've graduated with your 4-year degree and you're $40,000 in debt. Age 22, you get your $50,000 job, the job you get with your 4-year degree. And 15% of that you put toward the debt. So now your debt drops from 40,000 to 33. Age 23, you got your 3% raise. You put 15% into your paying off your debt. Your debt's now down to 25,000. You keep on doing that. It's going to take you 5 years to pay off that debt. Now, let me pause here for a minute because I know you probably know college loans are typically like 10 years, but college loans are 10 years because the banks will allow you to pay back over 10 years. What we're doing here is paying more than you would normally pay to pay it down quickly. So you're paying 15%. When you pay 15% of your income toward your college loans, you're paying them down faster than you would normally have to. So after the end of 5 years, you've completely paid off your college loans. So here you are at age 27, you're earning $58,000, you save 15% of it. You got $9,000 in your savings. Keep on doing this. And by the time you reach age 35, you're earning $73,000 and you have $88,000 in your savings account. Now compare these two scenarios. You're actually better off, way better off, taking the loan and going to college than you are working to save up the money for college. And that's kind of weird because it's not the thing that people normally say. They say, well, the best thing to do is to be debt-free if you possibly can. Just, work for a while, build up the money, and then pay cash for the college education. The numbers I'm showing you here are showing you that you're far, far better off taking the college loan. Now, the question is why? The answer is here. Look at the green. When you take the college loan, you're done with your 4-year degree at age 22. When you work to save up the money, you're not done with your 4-year degree until you're age 30. By taking the loan, you're able to start your post-college career 8 years sooner. That's 8 years of earning at the bachelor degree level that you don't have if you have to work to save up the money ahead of time. Another thing that's going on, look at how long it took you on your high school education income to save up enough to pay for college. It took you 8 years to save that $40,000. But with your bachelor's degree, how long did it take you to pay it back? It only took you 5. It took 3 fewer years to pay off the loan. And you got 8 years tacked on to your career. It's those two things together that cause the borrowing to be a much better deal than the saving up ahead of time. In fact, if you run these numbers through to age 67, so you're about to retire, it turns out you're over $1 million better off having taken the loan than you are not taking the loan. Now, be careful here. Go back to that picture I showed you of the different values of the different degrees, because when you turn on the news, you'll see somebody somewhere saying, this isn't fair. All I can do is get a job at Starbucks paying minimum wage, and I have $50,000 in debt that I can't afford to pay off. You see this frequently on the news, right? What you don't see is someone asking that person, what did you major in when you were in college? Because I guarantee you that person didn't major in finance, didn't major in mathematics or engineering. They probably majored in one of the things on the far right of the picture. So the moral of the story is, yeah, taking a loan to go to college is a much better idea financially than saving up ahead of time, provided you're majoring in a major that actually has some significant market value. If you're majoring in something over on the right-hand side, these numbers don't look as good as what I'm showing you. We talked about earning, we talked about spending and borrowing. Last piece to talk about is saving. There are 4 powerful forces for building savings. The first 2 you already know. Interest rates are high. Of course, your savings grows faster. If you put more money into savings every month, your savings grows faster. Everybody knows these things. Let me tell you a couple of people aren't aware of. One is time and the other is psychology. And these are particularly time is something you have going for you that few people do. Suppose you started saving $13 a day at age 18, and you save it earning 5% interest. Now, $13 a day, particularly for an 18-year-old, that's a decent chunk of money. It's not as bad for a 20-year-old, and for a 22, 23-year-old, it's actually not too terrible at all. But still, $13 a day, if you have a job doing something, it's doable, although painful. So this is at least possible. Save $13 a day starting at age 18, and you save it and you're earning 5% in your whatever portfolio you have this thing in. By age 67, you've got $1 million. The recipe for becoming a millionaire, yeah, it has to do with how much interest you earn. Yes, it has to do with how much you save, but it has a tremendous amount to do with when you start saving. The younger you start, the bigger this pile of money is going to be by the time you reach age 67. And what I'm showing you here with these numbers is anybody can be a millionaire. All you got to do, it's going to take a little bit of pain up front, right? $13 a day is, that's significant, but you start early. And you start early. By the time you're 67, by the time you're 66, $13 a day is nothing. That's like you find it in the cushions of your couch, right? But by the time you reach age 67, that $13 a day has added up and you've got $1 million. What if you waited? What if you say to yourself, okay, this sounds pretty good, but $13 a day, it's a bit much. I'll wait a few years. Let's wait till age 23 to start saving. At age 23, you're going to start saving $13 a day. Okay. By age 67, you'll have accumulated $760,000. That 5-year delay, just 5 years. You could have started at 18, you waited until 23. That 5-year delay cost you $250,000. That's the power of time that's currently on your side, as young as you are. Some of you are in 9th grade. That puts you at what, like 14, 15? The numbers become even more compelling there. Those extra few years you've got are going to mean a tremendous amount come age 67. So what's it take to retire a millionaire? If you start at age 18, $13 a day does it. If you wait until 25, it's going to cost you $19 a day. If you wait to start until you're 35, it's going to cost you $35 a day. That's $500 a paycheck. That's really painful. If you wait until you're 45, it becomes pretty much impossible. So you can quite literally do something right now that is impossible for a 45-year-old to do. That is, you can start from zero and end up a millionaire. The 45-year-old can't do that. He doesn't have enough time. Last point is psychology. The psychology of savings is really important. Savings is difficult. It's not fun. You see your friends going out and buying things that you'd like to have, and you can't do this because you saved. There's a psychological thing that goes on here. And that is, the more you save, the more you'll want to save. At first, it's going to be, $13 a day, and this is painful. And, you would like to buy something, and particularly with Christmas coming up and all these things. But if the more you put away, all of a sudden, it'll take a little bit of time, maybe 6 months, maybe a year. But after 6 months, maybe a year of this, you look at your bank account and you start to see 4 digits. And then the 4 digits become more and more. And eventually they become 5 digits, right? As you see the savings start to rise, something changes in your head such that the saving itself becomes fun. It no longer becomes painful. It becomes almost like a game to see how big you can make these numbers go. Why does this happen? I don't know. You'd have to ask a psychologist, but I'm telling you it does. As soon as you get over that hump of a few months of this is really hard, and you start to see the savings grow, all of a sudden your psychology changes and the savings becomes fun. It's no longer a drudgery. So that's the first part. The second part is, be careful that you save first, spend second. The way people normally do this is they get income, they spend the income, and then whatever's left they save. That's the wrong order. You get income, the very first thing you do is you take a chunk out. My advice is 15%. You take a chunk out, you save it. And then you spend whatever's left over. And notice what happens when you do it that way. When you do it that way, your spending will grow to match whatever's left over after you've taken the 15% out. If you do the spending first, your spending will grow to match whatever you have. And you're going to find that most of the time you don't have anything left to save because you've spent it all. If you take the savings out first, it becomes much easier to save than if you take it out second. And the best way to do this, you could do this with your employers. Even if you have minimum wage jobs, you could probably do it with your employer, is you sign up with your employer for them to automatically take the savings out of your paycheck. So you never even see it. Your paycheck comes along, you have all these taxes and withholdings and all this. And one of the withholdings is a savings. It is your 15% or whatever it is, it's gone into a savings account for you. So the check that you get is what you can spend. You spend all of it because the savings has already occurred. So that's all I have. Oh, if you like what you're hearing, I have a podcast, Words and Numbers, you should check out. You can find it on all the major podcast players. But we have a few minutes, and I'm happy to answer any specific questions for you that we didn't go over here. I know there's one that I'll just jump in with right now. And that was, several people asked about, should you save in stocks and bonds and these sorts of things? And my advice to you is no, don't. I'm not saying don't save in stocks and bonds. I'm saying don't do it yourself. If you want to play in the stock market, right? You think it's fun to invest in eBay and watch it go up or down or whatever it is, that's fine, but do that for fun. Don't do it for serious savings. For serious savings, what you're going to do is you'll start off putting it in just in a regular bank account, regular savings account. Savings accounts pay like basically zero. So you're making zero interest for a little while here. Put it into a regular bank account until you get a couple of thousand saved up, which won't take long. It'll take something, but it won't take too terribly long. So you get a couple of thousand saved up. When you got a couple of thousand saved up, you'll have enough to put the money somewhere else. Maybe you could put it into a CD, and the bank will do this for you. You just call them up and say, I want to put my savings into a CD. And the CD pays a little bit more. It's still not much at all. It's a little bit more. You have it in there. And after a couple of years, you'll now get up to a decent chunk of money. Maybe you're at 5,000, maybe you're even at 10,000. At that point, you get a portfolio manager. And you have to look around for this, and you get your parents to help you, or if you have a business teacher at your high school that can do this as well. But a portfolio manager is a person who takes people's savings and invests it in the stock market for them. And the portfolio manager is trained to do these things well, right? So he knows, is better at guessing which stocks are going to go up, which are going to go down than you are. But don't try and do this yourself, because investing in stocks can be very lucrative. It can also be extremely dangerous. You want a professional doing this. So to drive the point home, so here I am. I've been a CFO for a corporation. I have a PhD in economics. I don't do my own investing. I have a portfolio manager who does that for me because it's not my expertise. Get someone who has this expertise. Now, a big footnote here. There are portfolio managers just like car mechanics. There are some really good ones who are cheap. There are some really good ones who are expensive. There are some who will just steal your money, and they might be anything from cheap to expensive. So you want to be careful where you go. And this requires doing a lot of research. You do research into what's a good portfolio manager, how much they charge you, all these sorts of things. But when you get to the point of needing one, so when you get up to the $5,000 or $10,000 level, that's the time at which you start to spend some serious effort thinking about this more clearly. I have a question here. Will all employers take money out of your paycheck and put it in savings if you ask them to? The answer is no, not all of them, but many of them will. Particularly for minimum wage jobs, it's going to vary. For example, my kids worked at a McDonald's here, and McDonald's did have that deal that they would put, you could arrange to have money taken out, they would put some in. What you may find, you have to ask the employer. What you may find, some employers, not all of them, but some of them, will actually contribute. So they'll say something like, okay, if you take 10% of your paycheck out and put in savings, we, the employer, will put another 1% in there for you. It's just an incentive for you to save a little bit more. So check with your employer. In fact, it's one of the questions to ask if you're looking for a job, you're doing an interview. And of course, at the end of the interview, they always ask, do you have any questions for us? And nobody knows what to ask them, right? This is a good thing to ask. Do you have a savings plan? Do you have automatic deduction that I can take money out of my paycheck, put it into savings? Let me tell you one other thing. People ask me, it came on the list of questions you sent, what one piece of advice would I give to someone your age? I'm going to give you this piece of advice, and I'm going to tell you that you're not going to listen to it, because I give this piece of advice to everybody and they don't listen to it. I gave it to my kids and they don't listen to it. People gave it to me and I didn't listen to it. Now I regret it. So the piece of advice that's the best piece of advice and nobody listens to is start saving immediately and start saving as much as you can. I think the 15% rule is pretty good. And part of the reason young people don't pay attention to that, and I didn't either when I was young, is because the idea of being 67 years old just makes no sense. It's like saying, well, when you live on Mars, well, I'm never going to live on Mars, right? It doesn't make sense to you. You can't picture yourself as a 67-year-old. But here's the thing. When you're 25, you still won't be able to picture yourself as a 67-year-old. When you're 35, you still won't be able to picture yourself as a 67-year-old. When you're 50, you'll start to be able to picture yourself as a 67-year-old. But the problem is, by the time you're 50, it's too late. If you want to save so that the 67-year-old version of yourself is a millionaire, you got to start now. If you wait until it makes sense that you'll eventually be a 67-year-old, it's too late. What other questions you have?
Can I ask it this way?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. So when you were saying like about the picturing, I was like, I can't picture myself being a 67-year-old with that much money. Like, let's say I had like $1 million. What do I do with that money then?
Yeah. So what happens when you hit 67 and you retire, or if you can retire later, you're faced all of a sudden with the same problem you're facing now. Only the problem you're facing now is, okay, how do I take all this money that's going to be coming in over the course of my life and save it up into a big pile? When you hit age 67, the question reverses and you say, I've got this huge pile of money. At what rate can I spend it down such that it lasts until, for the rest of my life? And you'll go through the same kinds of questions you're going through now. And the same sorts of things. Spending matters, earning matters. Maybe even if you're retired, you have a little job paying something on the side, this kind of thing. All that matters. One of the things you'll have going for yourself is when you're 67, you have a couple of million saved up. You turn to your portfolio manager, and your portfolio manager will have a service, and they will do this for you. And they'll give you advice. They'll say, okay, if you can put off retirement for 2 more years, you'll be able to withdraw $80,000 a year from your savings and live to 110. Or if you retire now, you can withdraw $80,000 a year, but you're only going to be able to pay for yourself to age 95. Then what happens? I don't know. So the portfolio manager will help you walk through the answers to those questions when the time comes. Your job for the moment is to build up the biggest war chest you possibly can, so that when it comes time to answer those questions, you have the maximum ability to make choices. And Luke has a question here. What do you recommend for the percent that you save in cash, invest, and spend? Yeah, that's Luke. The answer varies by age. 15% across the board is a good answer. If you start at age 18, 15% is beautiful. You're going to be fine, no problems. If you start at age 30, 20, 25% is probably the right answer. It varies. And again, this is when if you ignore everything I've told you and you go through college and you graduate college and you get a real job somewhere, your real job will have a human resources department. And one of the things they will do for you is help to answer these questions. So you walk into the HR and you say, look, I don't have any savings. How much do I have to save here to be able to retire comfortably? And they'll run numbers for you, and they'll come back and say something like, well, you're going to have to save 30% of your paycheck or whatever it is. But they'll help you with that. Make sure you get as much help as you possibly can. Don't try to make these decisions on your own. They're really complicated. Make use of whoever can help you. Kaylee says, is it smart to put all your money into the bank, or should you keep some money in cash out of the bank? Kaylee, once upon a time, that was a serious problem. Our banking system and our knowledge of economics has progressed far beyond that, such that there's no need to keep cash at all. In fact, if anything, keeping cash is dangerous because it can burn, you can lose it, this sort of thing. For the entirety of my professional life, have never had cash. I do everything electronically. So it's all within the banking system. And you read things about like the banking panics back in the 1920s when people tried to withdraw their money, there was no money there. None of that is a problem now for all sorts of technical reasons. If you take economics, you'll study some of them, but none of that is a problem now. What do you do after you max out your FDIC? I don't think you mean FDIC, Luke. I think you mean IRA. Okay, so here's how this works. We've been talking about saving. What I haven't said anything about yet is the fact that there is a way that you can save your money prior to the taxes being taken out. So for example, if I earn $100, normally, let's say $20 of that is taxed and I only get $80 left. And so I could save some of this $80. There is a way that I can save out of the 100. So the 100 comes in and I can take savings out of that and it's not taxed. I put it into what's called an IRA, which stands for Individual Retirement Account, IRA. There are versions of that your employer will help set up called 401ks. So IRA, 401k, it's the same kind of thing. What happens is you put money in there before it's untaxed. So you're able to put more money in because the government hasn't taken its taxes out. The game is when you reach retirement and you pull the money out to spend, it's taxed then. So it's not taxed up front when you put it in, it's taxed at the end when you take it out. There are versions of that. You might have heard the term a Roth IRA. A Roth IRA is the reverse of that. The money's taxed, it's taxed going in and it's not taxed coming out. For your purposes, generally the no tax going in is the one you want, the IRA or the 401k. And there's a limit on how much you can put in, right? And it varies. The Congress changes it from time to time. I don't know what the number is right now, but it's high enough that neither one of us is going to hit it anytime soon, right? So don't worry about it at the moment. When you get to the point of maxing out, that's a great place to be. At that point, you'll have enough that you'll already have a portfolio manager and probably an accountant who will advise you on what to do. And Luke goes on to ask, is this IRA, is it used just for investments in stock or other assets? You can invest in whatever you want. So you put your money in the IRA, and once it's in the IRA, you can then say, okay, I want it in the stock market, or I want it in bonds, or I just want it in, savings and CDs, right? You can decide what you want to do with it. Generally speaking, where you want to be at your age is entirely in stocks. Stocks are risky, right? Because they go up, they go down. But on average, over time, the ups outweigh the downs. And so for someone your age, you don't have to worry too much about the downs. You put your money in, you'll say, oh my God, the stock market is down 20% and I've lost all this savings. It's okay. Next year, it's going to be up 20%. You'll be fine. The person who has to worry about that is the 67-year-old who has to take out $80,000 every year to live on. And if the stock market all of a sudden drops, they can't take out the 80,000. Now they've got to do something, right? So those fluctuations in the stock market that matter for the older people don't matter for you. Just leave your money in there and let it go.
Social Security. So my AP math teacher, he was talking about how there are really strong beliefs that in the near future, Social Security just really won't be a thing anymore. I don't know if that's a good way of putting it as a thing, but we get money, like, I know when I work and stuff, I get money taken out of my, my paycheck and stuff for Social Security. Now, if it's no longer a thing, like, where does that money go? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So the way this works is what people think happens is not what happens. The way we think that happens is that the money comes out of our paycheck and goes into some pot that in Social Security that will come back to us. That's not what happens. The money comes out of our paycheck. It just goes into the government, and the government will pay out money to Social Security retirees. Currently, under current rules, so current tax rates, current Social Security benefit rates, all of that stuff, Social Security will be bankrupt within about 10 years, maybe 12 years. So what's going to happen between now and then is the nature of Social Security is going to change. What'll change likely is, and it's anybody's guess, right? But my best guess is what's going to happen is Congress will start to do what's called means testing. Means testing means that rather than everybody getting Social Security benefits when you retire, they're going to do something like say, okay, how much money do you have in savings? You have a lot of money in savings, you're going to get less of a Social Security benefit. You have a lot of money in savings, you don't get any Social Security benefit, something like that, to help stretch the money. So I'll tell you two things. One is nobody knows what's going to happen because it's a huge problem that Congress has put off dealing with for literally decades, such that it's unclear how this thing can survive at all. So that's the first thing I'll tell you. The second thing I'll tell you is plan on it not being there. If it is there when you retire, that's great. It's extra. But make all of your financial planning as if Social Security was not going to exist when you retire.
That's some sad news, right?
Well, yes and no. Yes and no. It turns out that Social Security is such a bad investment deal that you'd be actually better off not being taxed at all and not getting benefits.
Right.
So yeah, the sadness is there's going to be a sad transition here. It's going to be painful for about 10 or 15 years till we figure out what comes next.
Dr. Davis, thank you. This was amazing presentation. I even learned some things too. Everybody can always learn, see? And
My pleasure.
For coming. Yeah.
My pleasure. Thank you all.
And that's all the time we've got this week on Words and Numbers. Until next time, be sure to follow us on Twitter. Handles are in the show notes. Join Words and Numbers Backstage, the Facebook group where the conversation continues, and
send us email, wordsandnumberspodcast@gmail.com.
Until next week, try to be nice to one person who doesn't deserve it. Just one. And who knows, it may turn into a trend. Give it a shot. You might feel good about yourself.
You could say you tried.
You tried, that's right. Till next week, can't take it easy.
See you next week, James.